Good morning. If you want to open your Bibles to Luke chapter 10, our sermon this morning is an examination, or it's actually just a fight between two. A fight between Mary and Martha. Well, sisters tend to do that, I suppose. I only had one sister, and she could fight. It's always her fault. No, probably not true. We'll look at the interaction there, starting in Luke chapter 10, verse 38. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. She went up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her." In our examination of this one versus that one, we first look at Martha. Martha has done a great thing. She went out and found a great person. She went out and said, "Hey, come to my house. I'm going to feed you. I will show hospitality." Her hospitality is to be applauded. She's done a really good thing here. Not only is she hospitable in offering her house, but she is distracted with serving. She is attending to his needs. As a Jewish woman, the place that she is fulfilling is one that's expected. It's one that shows subservience. She is attending to what her guests need. It's an example that we continue to do now, and that whoever is hosting something at their home typically attends to whatever their guests need. And here she's doing that. She's distracted from what's going on in the home to attend to what the needs are of her guests. And she's doing a great job of it. She's bold as well, as we've been looking all year so far at serving with all boldness. She is being bold. Obviously, Jesus is the one in the room teaching. He is the one capturing attention. He is the one that everyone else is focused on. And he is presenting ideas, maybe parables. The exact conversation is irrelevant for the purposes of what Luke has written down. But he's there and he's being Jesus. She interrupts, which is not her place. But boldly she stops the conversation and says, "Do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Hey, I could use a hand over here. Tell her to help me." So this is not her place. It's not her place to do this. But back to that hospitality. How much does she need to be doing? How much does she have going on that she needs that much more help? She can't do it on her own. How many hands does it take to serve coffee? How many people does it take to show hospitality in your home? What is she entertaining that is entertaining enough that needs that many people? She is going above and beyond. She is really trying. And we point out positives of both sides. This is what the fifth, this one versus that one. And this is how I start these sermons, or this is how even the one that I wasn't here for, that's how it started. There's good qualities on both sides. You can't take away from what Martha has done. She has done above and beyond for being hospitable. She's a great example for that. But she's lacking something. We'll come back to her in a minute. Let's look at Mary. She gets one whole verse, right? She gets one verse and then a fist wag from her sister. Mary is called. And I use this word. I thought about not using this word, but I decided to use this word anyway. She is called to where she's at. No one tells her to come over here and sit down. Don't know the condition of her heart or what was whispered into her ear by the Spirit. I'm not trying to entertain any of that. I'm saying is she felt compelled that the right place for her to be was sitting at the feet of Jesus listening to what he had to say. She felt that the right place for her to be was to be sitting at his feet listening to what he had to say. She is showing subordinates to the master. She has placed herself in the place of a pupil, in the place of a student, one who wants to observe and to take in from one who she is giving the nod of authority to. She is nodding to Jesus' authority by her placement and saying, you have the capacity to teach me. She knows her place and she's putting herself there. However, that is also a boldness on her part, because her place, and this is a hot take if I've ever heard one, her place is in the kitchen. That's where she needs to be. I told you it's a hot take. It's where she belongs. And the Jewish society and Jewish culture, she is supposed to be serving the needs of the household. I'm not trying to make any sexist comments. That's the way it was set up, and that is where she would be expected to be. She is passing beyond that scope of her practice and moving to whatever is more important. This is a new concept. There is something more important than the physical service. Throughout the last couple of thousand years, doing that physical service was important. In fact, it was almost the most important thing that they would do. They had to live their entire lives as Israelites, preparing to sacrifice, preparing to serve, getting ready to go to the temple annually. They're supposed to be focused on the home and the things that their home is doing. She is bold enough to step beyond that, place herself in the teaching under the teaching of the Messiah. This is against a social norm and bold on its own. What a great example. Don't let anything stop you from being close to Jesus, is what she does, is the example for us. Nothing is as important. Whatever it is that Martha needs help with, whatever it is that's going on in the house, there's nothing that's keeping her from putting herself in a place where she can learn more about the Master, where she can spend time listening and learning from him. Like, what a great opportunity, right? How many of you have a Bible in your own home? How much time do you spend preparing things in your own home versus sitting at the feet of your Master, turning the pages and reading what it is that he has to say? Those words are no less powerful. They're saved by influence of the Spirit, by God himself. And that teaching is available in your own home. Does the service of the home get in the way of your studying, sitting at his feet, and reading what it is that he has saved for us? What does it take for you to drop everything and learn from him? What does it take for you to set it down and just listen to him? As they were going along the road, someone said to him, "I'll follow you wherever you go." We sing a song that says a similar thing, right? Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." To another he said, "Follow me." We sing that song too, right? He said, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." And Jesus said to him, "Leave the dead to bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God." Yet another he said, "I will follow you, Lord, but first let me say farewell to those in my home." Jesus said to him, "No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." We can come up with every excuse possible, and we have come up with every excuse imaginable to let our busyness get in the way of listening to what it is that God has to say, listening to what it is that Jesus would teach us on how to be, who to be. If you're too busy to serve, if you're too busy to read, if if you're too busy to be prepared, then you're too busy. And that's not an excuse. It's an indictment. If you're too busy to be a good Christian, then the answer is you're too busy. And something should be pared down. What gets cut out of your life should not be the Word of God. It should be the other things around the Word of God. Martha is trying her best to be the best Jewish woman that she can be. What is to be cut out is some of that service, so that we can be more like Him. If you're too busy, you're too busy. And I want to bring up an example that I thought of whenever I saw it, and I was a part of it, and I was like, you know what, I could have, and we could have done that better. After our annual sing, while we still had guests here in the building, we were trying to get back in order for Sunday morning. Now, it's nice that we were ready for Sunday morning. That's all well and good. Could we have handled that time better? I'm not condemning everybody. I'm not even condemning me. I'm saying I understand very well how easy it is to be Martha. Because things need to be ready. I get all kinds of anxiety if the PowerPoints aren't ready. And that's about the silliest thing at all, because you've all got Bibles and they've got them in the pews. There's no reason that PowerPoint has to be ready, but I get all kinds of anxiety if it's not perfect. Even the picture in the background has to be perfect. All just extra and silly, because it's the words that are important and not the rest of it. She felt called. Mary felt called that this is where she needed to be. She needed to be at the feet of her Savior, to be Savior, at the feet of the Master, the feet of the teacher, the rabbi, to learn. She has done what it is that was brought up in Matthew chapter 13. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and covered up. There in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. Immediately in the next verse, another parable. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant who sells fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great value went and sold all that he had and bought it. Can you drop everything to serve God? What does that take? What does it take for you to stop and close everything out and focus on the Savior? Jesus calls his disciples to be followers in verses 52 to 58 of John chapter 6. Discusses eating his flesh and drinking his blood. And it puts off many of the followers. In verse 66, after many of his disciples turned away and would no longer walk with him, Jesus said to the 12, "Do you want to go away as well?" Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life, and we have believed and come to know that you are the Holy One of God." What value is it that you put on the words that Jesus has, on the words that God has saved? Martha tries to balance. Mary drops everything, forsakes the entire household. If you are looking from society's viewpoint, Mary is just being dumb. She's being irresponsible. She's being a bad hostess. She is not honoring her guests. And yet she is the one who has done better because of the value that she has placed in her relationship with the Master. A lawyer stood up to put him to the test. This is Luke chapter 10. It's hard to see on the PowerPoint. But if you opened your Bible and looked at the account that we read of Mary and Martha, this is what happens just before. This is one of the reasons that the Gospels themselves have great power. The story is a continuation. The story of Mary and Martha is a continuation. Oh, and here's another example. The story starts, or we'll pick it up, in Luke chapter 10, verse 25. And behold, a lawyer stood up and put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? The lawyer asks the question about eternal life. Jesus gives two answers. Eternal life is based off of two things, according to the Master. Your devotion to God, your love for God, and how that manifests between yourself and your neighbor. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Do this, and you will live. The very next thing is, now there were two sisters. Jesus is in their home. One is serving and dealing with the physical needs of the people in the home. And the other is fully and completely devoted to the words of life, the words of God. Why love God? What does that look like? Often quoted. Often we want to fight and defend for this verse about what comes next and what has come before, what the end of the chapter says, and how you shouldn't just read one little snippet. And yet I would ask you to stop and just read one little snippet and take it as a faith-building verse. Take it as an understanding, something that offers comfort, that shouldn't begin an argument, but should be the answer to the question. That God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. God does not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Because God loved us, Jesus came and dies willingly. We also have the ability to die with him willingly, and not because there's Kool-Aid that we need to drink for salvation, but because he died and we get to die in a symbolic way, because he was raised and we also get raised in a symbolic way, because he goes on to a new thing and so do we. This is how baptism works. It is the answer of Jesus was killed. So in our repentance from our previous life, we put to death that man of sin in us. Just like Jesus was put into the ground and covered with a stone, or the tomb was covered with a stone, we are put into the watery grave of baptism. Just like that grave could not contain him, the water does not contain us. And so we spring up out of it, some faster than others. I've seen a couple of them that were kind of funny. That's okay. But just like Jesus was put down and came back, we willingly put ourselves down, so that Romans chapter 6 verse 5, for if we have been united with him in a death like his, we shall certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his. So here on earth, we get wet. And you get wet, you get under the water, you're completely wet. But in heaven, a name is written in a book. Your name is written in the book of life, so that when the great judge opens the rolls on the day of judgment, and he looks down at all of those who Jesus has paid for their sins, he finds your name and says, oh, you belong here. My Son paid for you. Man, that makes those words feel important, right? That makes whatever it was that Jesus had to say at Martha's house, that makes that feel really important. You know what it is? It's so important that it's been saved for us for 2,000 years now, of the things that are written down for us to know. And our love for God and the sacrifice that he made manifests in our love for our neighbor. Our ability to focus on God as the primary thing that we live our life for. Our being. Our focus on God manifests in how we show ourselves to others, how we treat others. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no greater commandment. There is no other commandment greater than these. No amount of service, no amount of preparation or hospitality or any other good work that we can do should be between what it is that God has told us to do and what it is that we can do for our neighbor. Your love for God manifests in what you can do for others and how you treat others. One more parable here. Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 8, or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, seek diligently until she finds it. And when she has found it, she calls her friends and her neighbors, saying, rejoice with me, I have found the coin that I lost. Just so, I tell you, there is joy before the angels of God over one sinner who repents. If this is how God feels, that He will light a lamp, sweep the house, search until it's found, to make sure that the opportunity to be saved is yours. And upon accepting the salvation that He's offered, would celebrate in other places, in other scriptures, would throw a party and invite everyone. If that's His reaction to our salvation, if it's that important to Him, that we belong to Him, that we would sit at His feet and listen and learn, how important should that be to us? That same salvation. In the movie The Grinch, reluctantly the Grinch shows up for the party. And you can tell they do a great job in that movie showing how everybody's excited except the Grinch. Everybody's excited but him. Do you mourn your salvation? Do you mourn your religion? I've got to go worship God again. Oh no. What chapter are we studying on Sunday morning that I've got to break this Bible out and read and prepare? How bad are the questions written in the Wednesday night book that I have to go fight over them this week? I dread it. Do you celebrate your salvation or do you mourn it? If you mourn your salvation, who are you going to share that with? And more importantly, who wants to be a part of that? If your salvation is just a ticket to heaven and you're stuck doing unpleasant things before you get there, who wants to be a part of that? How loving does that sound? Salvation is an issue of joy, comfort, peace, not dread, fear, responsibility, obligation. But is that how you feel when you are tasked with talking to someone? They're going to hate me. This is going to change my status with my job. This is going to change my status with other people. They're not going to talk to me anymore. I may not be able to shop at this store afterwards. Mary was strong enough and bold enough to break the social norms. So much so that in her own sister's house, she would be ridiculed because of her love for the Master. In her own sister's house, she would forsake her sister. That's what she did. To listen to what the Master has to say. Are we listening to what it is that He has to say? Mary wins. I don't know if you caught on yet or not. Mary wins. Of Mary versus Martha, Martha versus Mary, Mary is the one who has done the greater thing. Mary is fully and completely focused on Jesus, and her focus on God will require her to focus on other people as well. So we're called on to do the same thing. Instead, seek his kingdom, and those things will be added to you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell all your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Our governments around here like to keep a 5-year plan. Many businesses keep a 5 or a 10 or a long-term outlook plan. Your finances at home, if you do any budgeting, carry at least a 1-month plan, if not an annual plan, so that you're prepared for gift giving at a particular time, so that you're prepared for a vacation at a particular time. We all know how to prepare for the things in the future because we do those things physically on earth. The more important thing is, what kind of keeping of those treasures do we do so that we can share them with others? Provide yourselves with money bags that do not grow old. It's not talking about cash. We know that. So how do you manifest that in your life? All right, preacher, now you're meddling. You went from storytelling to meddling. Our focus on God manifests in how we treat others and what we show others. Mary is bold enough to break the social norms and carry and let other people see that her love for God will not be stopped by anything else. She's got a great relationship with her master because he is the focus of her life. If it is that Jesus is not the focus of your life, maybe you haven't been baptized, as we talked about earlier, and come into a relationship where you have found that treasure and you want to hold on to it forever. If that's something you need to do, that's something you need to do. And you shouldn't let it wait for anything.